So, I want to start by saying that Prabhupada loved the Vaishnava philosophy. That was my experience through 10 years with him. And he was really, I would say, a traditionalist, although he adopted many sort of innovations in the tradition for the benefit of his preaching throughout the world, especially in the West. He was really a traditionalist, and he enjoyed presenting the philosophy based on the scriptures. So he would, even from the beginning, when I first met him in 1967 in this little storefront in San Francisco, he would quote verses from Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, from other places, and then he would explain those verses. This is the standard method of presenting Krishna consciousness. Now, many devotees, even senior devotees, and I don't fault these devotees for any way that's presented Krishna consciousness. Obviously, any way that we can present Krishna consciousness to the public is a bona fide way. We want to present Krishna's name, the names of the Mahamantra, and the philosophy however we can to other people. But in the traditional way, the philosophy is presented based on the Sanskrit language, the original Sanskrit language. And when Prabhupada presented the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, he presented it with the original Sanskrit, then with English synonyms, with translation and purport. And these are meant to flow one into the other. The original verse, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samvetaya Yutsava. So that's the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Then the English synonyms, Dharma Kshetre in the place of Dharma, Kurukshetre in the place of the Kurus, in the land of the Kurus, and Samveta, they're all assembled. And then the translation, in the place of Dharma, in the place of the Kurus, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? Assembled there, desirous of fighting. And then in the purport, Prabhupada says Dharma. Dharma significantly impacts the outcome of this endeavor. And Dharma also indicates that Dharma, the word Dharma is especially important because Dhritarashtra knew that the Pandavas were dharmic. So he understood that Dharma influences the outcome of the battle. So this is what Prabhupada desired. He wanted us to understand from verse to translation to purport. If you go to the Bhagavad Gita, you'll notice that the way I translated it was not exactly the way Prabhupada translated it because I don't memorize the translations. The important thing is to memorize the words of the verse, their meaning, and how they appear in the purport, what their significance are in the purport. So this is the traditional way of presenting the philosophy, the Vaishnava philosophy, or the Bhagavata philosophy. It's called Shastra Chakshus. So Shastra Chakshusa means by or through the vision of the Shastra. Chakshus means the eyes. Chakshu means eye. So through the vision of the Shastra. So when I labeled this class Transcendental Vision, that's what I meant. Through the vision of the Shastra. Now in Indian, also within the Indian tradition, there are 6 darshans. Darshan is something, when we come in the temple, we take darshan of the deity. So darshan means to see the deity, or sometimes darshan means if somebody comes into the audience of a king. So we say, in English, we say that the audience of the king, but in Indian language it's darshan. And darshan implies to see the king, but it's a kind of a respectful seeing. Well, there are 6 darshanas. That word darshan also means a specific philosophy or a specific world view. So when English philosophers describe philosophies, including religions, theologies, philosophies, they sometimes use this word world view. So how we view the world, meaning not necessarily just how we see it, but how we view it in terms of all of our perceptions. So darshan, that's the word that's used in Indian language. There are shad darshans, 6 darshans. And one of those is the Vedanta darshan. Vedanta means the end of the Vedas. Veda anta, end of the Vedas. And that includes especially Bhagavad Gita. It's based on Bhagavad Gita, which is a summary of the Upanishads. And Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of the 18 Vaishnava Puranas. 18 Puranas. And this, excuse me, lost my train of thought. This Vedanta philosophy, as I said, is one of 6 philosophies. Each one of these 6 philosophies supports its worldview by proofs. They're called pramanas. Now, in English terminology, it's called epistemology. Epistemology means how you support knowledge, how you acquire knowledge. So what is the valid way of acquiring knowledge? In school and universities throughout life in the West, we generally rely on only one type of epistemology, one darshan, which is predominant in the world now. That's scientific method. Now, scientific method is generally hypothesis, observation, experimentation, and testing. So this is fundamentally based on observation. So first, hypothesis. Hypothesis itself comes from observation. Then it is supported, a hypothesis is further supported by experimentation. Scientists experiment. They go to the lab, they go into the field, they experiment, they observe over and over again until they make a decision, a theory based on their observation and experimentation. No. Then there has to be a test. There has to be something, an independent test that tests this theory. Again, the test is based on observation. So this is the method that we learn, that we think in the West, in general, is very important. It's the way actually that we are conditioned. But as I said, in Indian philosophy, which has gone on for thousands of years, there are 6 of these methods for worldview, methods that support different worldviews, and each one of them has a way to prove what valid knowledge is. What is the validity of your worldview, of your collection of knowledge. Now, when we see crime shows or when we read a crime novel, we become absorbed in the idea that just the facts. We have to collect the facts. And then from those facts, they build a case and they understand who is the killer. So this is the way they acquire knowledge. So yes, there's a validity to observation, observing the facts. The knife was here, and the killer had a motive that he was going to collect a lot of insurance, and so all these things are collected, and then there's some deduction. I deduce based on these facts that this person is the killer. So this is normal. This is the way we operate, and this forms our worldview. In Vedanta, I'm not going to cover all these 6 philosophies, because our philosophy is one. It's Vedanta, 1 out of 6. And we emphasize 3, they're called pramanas, 3 proofs, or 3 parts of this epistemology, or how we acquire knowledge. There are in total 8 that are considered by these different philosophies, but we use 3. Excuse me. One is, and I'm using all these Sanskrit terms. I know maybe it's very unfamiliar, but this is our tradition, that we base it on Sanskrit, and so excuse me for that. So 3 pramanas, 3 proofs: pratyaksha, anumana, and shabda. Pratyaksha, and this is, anyway, I won't go into that, but pratyaksha means that which we see. Prati means in front, and aksha means the eyes. So that which is in front of our eyes, that which we see. So this corresponds largely with modern scientific method. It's through observation and through experimentation, which again is observation. So it very closely corresponds. Anumana means, it's similar to the word pramana. Pramana means proof, and anumana means inference or deduction. See, these, in scientific method, inference is the way somebody gets a hypothesis. The hypothesis is just a kind of an initial theory. Because I have some evidence, I infer something. It's not complete proof. It's just an inference. We have some of the facts, but we don't have all of them. So when the crime detective says, I think the wife did it. She killed her husband because he was beating her. So that's not the complete picture yet. It's just an inference. So that's a hypothesis. And then there's deduction. Then we collect all of the evidence, all of the facts, all of the proofs, the facts, all the things we observe, and we make a deduction. That's a theory. That's solid. And then we test that theory, and we come to our conclusion. That's scientific method. So this anumana in Sanskrit basically covers those 2, the inference, the hypothesis, and the deduction. It's basically the analysis. It's the analysis of what we see. Pratyaksha. Aksha, again, prati, in front of, eyes, what we see in front of ourselves. There's a third. Now, we consider as Vaishnavas, as followers of Vedanta, as followers of Samkhya, we won't get into that, we consider that Shabda is the most important. Shabda means word or sound vibration. So what does that word or sound vibration mean? It means the philosophy that we receive. The word Veda means knowledge. Another word for the Vedas, for this transcendental knowledge or transcendental sound vibration, is Brahma. Brahma means spirit, spiritual. It means Brahman. It means the soul. But essentially it means that which is spiritual, that which is beyond this material world. And a person who follows Brahma, who pursues Brahma, who tries to learn about Brahma, is a Brahmana. Brahma, Brahman. So, and anyone can become a Brahman just by pursuing this knowledge. That's a Brahman. Someone who pursues this knowledge. So the Vedas are Brahma. They are spirit. We include, as followers of Vedanta, we include all of the literatures. There are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, and Yajur Veda. So there are 4 Vedas, and they have their corollaries: the Upanishads, the Brahmanas, and we include within them the Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas. That's the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm pointing up here because we have the Bhagavatam on the altar. So, and we call our culture the Vedic culture. Really, for outsiders, we should call this the Vaishnava culture. It's more understandable to people on the outside. When we call it the Vedic culture, we mean that everything is based on the Vedas. Everything that we accept as reality, everything that we accept as the part of our worldview, it's based on the Vedas, and that includes the Puranas. And what's another word for the Vedas? Brahma, spirit. So everything that we accept is spiritual. All this knowledge is spiritual. Our worldview is spiritual. Worldview means our vision, our transcendental vision, which is the name of this talk. Vaishnava culture is it communicates better with the outside world because they can kind of understand that Vaishnavas are this group of people in India. There's maybe 1 million of them in Southeast Asia. There's a bunch of them in Fiji, and there's Vaishnavas a lot in America and Canada. And then our group is Gaudiya Vaishnava. We're part of that. So people outside, they can kind of understand that. But we view ourselves as members of the Vedic culture, and you'll hear that all the time in ISKCON because of what I just said. It's the culture, the spiritual culture. So that's our vision. Now, I want to say that what is the reason for this Shabda Pramana? Shabda, again, means the word or the sound vibration. And Pramana means the proof. So why is this? We describe this because it's Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means Purusha means person. Apaurushaya means it has nothing to do with the persons of this world. Purusha or Paurushaya means that it involves people of this world. It involves humans who have their own idea. Apaurushaya means it goes beyond that. You could say that Apaurushaya implies transcendental. It goes beyond human understanding. So, human understanding, it's considered there are 4 defects. The one is that we make mistakes. Mistakes, obviously, we know that we make mistakes. It doesn't have to be proven. Everyone makes mistakes. Our senses are limited even though we extend our senses, in the modern age, we extend our senses by science, by technical influence, even those are limited. So our senses and even the extension of our senses have limitations. We're subject to being illusioned. When we do perceive things, it can deceive us. We can be illusioned. And the fourth is that we can cheat or be cheated. Sometimes we'll find that a scientist will release a lot of data. So one example is that a scientist some years ago in the late 90s, he released data saying that if you get inoculations, that could lead to what do you call that? What do you call that? That woman we know. It's like some kind of a mental aberration. Sometimes these people are extremely intelligent, but they don't have a way to relate to society. I'm trying to think of the word. Anyway, starts with an A. Anyway, so this scientist produced some kind of research, but then it was found later that he was falsifying some of his research. So it was discredited. But still, some people believe that this research is correct. It may not be a very good example because even some devotees believe that this research was correct. But the idea is that cheating, tendency to cheat, maybe small white lies or big lies, tendency to cheat, and the tendency to believe the cheaters. Sometimes, one time I was walking on the street, and usually I'm a little susceptible if somebody approaches me on the street, and I understand if this was in Mexico, I understand that people have their little story they want to tell, and it's not true, so a lot of times I would see through it, the story. One time this guy told me that his mother had cancer. I said, okay, he wanted something, 200 pesos, it's not 20 bucks or something. So I said, okay, well, let's go see your mother. I said, where does she live? She's on the other side of town. Okay, I said, let's go see her. I'll give it to her. So of course he couldn't do it. But another time a man came to me and he told me this really nice story, and I was woven into somehow he was able to weave me into his story. He said, oh, I'm going to pay you back. It's for my books. I have to get my books at the university, and I'll pay you back on next Tuesday or something. And I'll see you because you come here. I was going to a gym. And he said, I see you because you come here, and I see you every week or whatever it was. Oh, okay. Believed him. And then, of course, it never happened. So, even though we may try, we get cheated. This is the world. So these four defects, I mean, maybe some people are more capable of resisting these things, but people are more or less. Sense is imperfect, we make mistakes, we have a tendency to be deceived or illusioned by the world, and we cheat and others cheat us. So, aparusheya means that it goes beyond that. Now, so what do we rely on? We rely on the vision of the Bhagavad Gita, as I said. These things, these verses and these Prabhupada's purports as he presented to us. Now, Prabhupada's purports are not really unique with Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada adds certain things to these purports, but his purports are based on the commentaries of Baladev Dhyavushan and Vishwanath Chakrabarti. They lived in the 1700s. And theirs were based on Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya and some of the older commentaries who lived in the 1300s, approximately. 1300s, 1100s. And then Shankaracharya, we find fault with his commentary, but his commentary is a Vedanta commentary, and his commentary is very close. Some of his conclusions we don't agree with, but if you look at his commentaries, they're very close because they're, after all, Vedanta commentaries. And he was in the 700s. So our commentaries go back 700s, and then Vyasadeva, this Srimad Bhagavatam, is considered 5,000 years ago. It's considered to be a natural commentary on the Vedanta and thus on the Bhagavad Gita. If you study the Bhagavad Gita, you see how it naturally flows into the Srimad Bhagavatam. One of the final verses of Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Now this is a very important verse to Vaishnavas. The Sri Vaishnavas say this is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And this verse, this idea of Sarva Dharman Parityajya, it flows naturally into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai parodharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje. It's, again, speaking about dharma. And the first chapter, the sages say, what are we going to do now Krishna has gone? Who will support dharma? So the answer is this Bhagavatam will support dharma. This Bhagavatam gives dharma. And Savai pungsang parodharma, and the highest dharma is to serve Krishna with bhakti. So the Bhagavatam, where it starts, is where the Bhagavad Gita leaves off. So it's considered the natural commentary Vedanta, on Vedanta, on the Gita. So this is our means of acquiring knowledge. And when we encounter science in the modern world, we can say it's valid. That's okay. It's something valid. But our science, when we talk about the science of Krishna consciousness, what we mean, what Prabhupada means, is it's a science that's based on these three principles, Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shabda, on the principle of observation and inference, deduction, similar to modern science. But this third component is Shabda. So without that Shabda, it's not Krishna consciousness science. So when somebody says, well, scientists have proven, or when science submits some kind of a report or a discovery or anything, that's valid. It's not that it's invalid, but it's not perfect. It's subject to these four defects: mistakes, limited in perception, subject to illusion, and cheating and being cheated. So there are these components. So we can accept science, modern science. There's no problem accepting it. But we have to always be a little skeptical that it's not part of the complete picture. And the complete picture is, we can understand from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's important to, even if we don't understand Sanskrit, all these terms, we don't really get that sort of traditional philosophy that Prabhupada was presenting. This one concept, this one idea is essential for all people of the Vedic culture or Vaishnava culture, that we accept the vision of the scriptures. And that is what really, truly forms our worldview. Because of the three, the Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shabda. Shabda is the most important for us. That's very much the most important. So, if there's anything that I represent from Prabhupada, different of his disciples represent different aspects of Prabhupada and of the tradition. Radhanath Swami is like Prabhupada. He's very charismatic and he's very wonderful preacher and convincing and communicative. Indradyumna Swami travels all around the world to the remotest parts. So each one of these disciples of Prabhupada, they represent something. Now my representation is not so perfect as theirs, but I believe that I represent, along with others certainly, this concept that the traditional philosophy is very important, to understand that philosophy the way Prabhupada delivered it in a traditional way, the Sanskrit and these basic concepts, these basic traditions, which form our vision of the world. Now, the last and most important component that I wanted to present is that is that right? 5 minutes after 1? Mm-hmm. The last and most important component.
2:05. I forgot to change the clock. Okay. 2:05.
The last and most important component is there is a verse from the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santak sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yankshama sundaram achintya guna surupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajan. So this means, and Prabhupada quotes this often. He quotes it in Sanskrit, he puts it in English. If you know the verse and you know what it means, then sometimes Prabhupada will be talking, he'll be saying something in English, and he won't bother to quote it in Sanskrit. He just puts it in his conversation in English. And if you know the verse, then you understand, oh, that's that verse he's referring to. So this is an extremely important verse. The Brahma Samhita itself, the book, was discovered by Chaitanya in South India. He came across this book and he considered it a very important book. Brahma Samhita means that it was first delivered by Brahma, who's a very important. We consider that Brahma created this whole creation on the order of the Supreme. And so this one verse, as a very devotional work, it's filled with bhakti. So this verse says, Prema Anjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. Prema Anjana. Anjana means a mascara. So if you have your eyes, prema, if you have your eyes, Bhakti Churita Prema Anjana. If you have your eyes anointed with the mascara, the Anjana of Bhakti. So if you're Vilochanena, it's through the vision of eyes anointed with the mascara of Bhakti and Prema. Prema means love. Prema means the highest love in Krishna consciousness. We see that there are various sort of levels. And the final level, the first, before the final level, is bhava. Bhava means pure love for Krishna. Almost pure. But prema means selfless love for Krishna. Now, love in the spiritual concept And some people in the material context understand love, that love doesn't mean a feeling. It doesn't mean that we just come to this high level of feeling something. I love God, I love you. So men especially, they say, oh, I love you to a woman. And women are sometimes captivated by this idea. But many men cheat women. This is a kind of a common thing. Not all men, of course, but many men will say that I love you. But love, real love, is characterized by service. So how do I serve you? By providing your shelter, by paying the rent, by bringing in the food, by contributing to the relationship. So that's service. Service, if I really love you, it's not that, oh, I have this feeling for you. Oh, it's a wonderful feeling. Am I reciprocating with your feelings towards me? That's very shallow concept. That's a very shallow concept of love. What do you think goes on for a 50-year relationship? Is it continued by this, oh, I feel for you? No, it's carried on by the fact that I am willing to sacrifice something of my life for you. I'm willing to put up with you with all of your defects. I'm willing to continue to support you in this relationship, and it's reciprocal, obviously. The woman does that for the man does that for the woman. So this is a material concept of love. And Prabhupada says that the highest love that we can observe in this world is a woman's love for her child. Now, the child, when he's first a baby, he emits this horrible poop. It's just the worst thing that you've ever smelled in your life. And yet the mother is changing the diapers, is cleaning up after her child. And why is that? She's serving that child, that helpless being, because of her love, because of her natural, it's a natural feeling that the woman has for her child. Probably no man can understand this. The child has caused her so much suffering. She had to carry this child for 9 months. No man can understand this. I'm only speaking out of theoretical understanding. 9 months, and then she passes the child out. And such pain. And then she changes the diaper, the horrible thing, and feeds the child. Oh, the child is not getting fed. And everybody knows who has a child. The child is screaming all night, crying all night, and demanding attention. No sleep. Parents get no sleep. They have to do their whatever they do in the day, and then at night they have to take care of the child. It's just an impossible life that starts in the beginning. And then the child grows. And then the child is annoying, asking all questions and doing all kinds of things. But the parent, generally, they don't find that to be annoying. They find it delightful. Oh, the child walked. Now the child is talking. It's to other people that they might find it annoying. But in general, the parents, their threshold for annoyment, how do you say it? Annoyment is very high. They're not bothered. And then the child grows, the child matures, becomes a teenager. Impossible. The teenager is abusive. I hate you. Teenagers say, I hate you. Most teenagers say things like this. So abusive to their parents. And still the parents tolerate. That's love. That's love. So, as far as it can be loved in the material world, so there are many imperfections in the material world, but love is service. It's not this, oh, I feel love, and I'm feeling ecstasy from that love. That's not love. The love is service. Therefore, when Prabhupada translates bhakti, many people just translate bhakti into devotion. But Prabhupada translates it as devotional service. Because bhakti is not just love or some feeling or devotion. Devotion means devotional service. So what am I doing in that relationship? So what are you doing? You're a man. What are you doing for your relationship? You're a woman. What are you doing for your child? So that's love. And love for Krishna, prema, is the highest love. And we go to observe that highest love to Radharani. Radha is the personification of bhakti. And we look to Radharani for the highest love. Now, I'm not going to get into in details about the interactions between Radha and Krishna. Our great acharyas, like one devotee was asking me a friend of mine was asking me some question recently. I said, I don't know, I don't want to answer that question because my specialty is Bhagavad Gita, meaning my specialty is the basics. He said, oh yeah, I know, you're famous for that, Dayananda. So I have friends who sort of specialize in this high relationship between Krishna and Radha, and Krishna and the gopis. So the reason we study these relationships between Krishna and the gopis is so we, in our lowly platform, can understand, can have this goal of selfless love, unselfish love toward Krishna. And there's a beautiful section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's in the 20th chapter of the Antya Lila. And Lord Chaitanya has given 8 verses that's considered to be the essence of his teaching. And that's all he left. That's all he gave, was those 8 verses. It starts with Cheto Darpanamajanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapnam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan. So this is the first of the 8 verses glorifying the Shri Krishna Sankirtan, this idea of the holy name of Krishna, this idea of bhakti, this idea of love for Krishna. And then he continues, and it's a gradual progression. And then the 8th verse, it contains the highest bhakti, prema. And one of our gurus, one of our great teachers, has written this Chaitanya Charitamrita. And but he didn't write it alone. He based his Chaitanya Charitamrita on the diaries of Swarup Damodar, who was an intimate of Chaitanya. So it's not as though it's solely his creation. But this Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have 3 literatures: Bhagavad Gita, which is the basic philosophy, then Bhagavatam, and we follow the Bhagavad culture, actually. The Bhagavad culture. And the Bhagavatam contains the essence, the basis for our culture. The Vaishnava culture is the Bhagavad culture. The Chaitanya Charitamrita goes a little further. It contains something even more intimate, more advanced. You can say even that the Chaitanya Charitamrita is somewhat optional. We understand Mahaprabhu. We should study the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But really the basis, the whole culture is contained within the Bhagavatam. So to understand prema, this high level of love, we can go to this 20th chapter of the Antya. The Antya means the last section out of 3. There's the preliminary, first, Adi. Madhya means middle, and then Antya means final. So the 20th chapter of this final section is a discussion of these 8 verses. So then if you turn to the 8th discussion, it's better not just to turn to the last, you read all of them. But when you go to the last, then you see this interaction between Radha and Krishna and the explanation of that. And essentially, it's a demonstration of selfless love. How can you serve with selfless love? So that's Ananya Bhakti. Ananya means undistracted by anything else. And unmotivated. Unmotivated and undistracted love. Unmotivated means you have no interest whatsoever. I'm serving you. I don't want anything in return. Nothing. So, of course, when we think in this world, we think that I don't want anything. Okay, I'll give you this. Here, I'm giving you this gift here. I don't want anything in return. But that's not true. I want the good feeling of having given it, I want to know. Well, or I know that if I give something, I'll get something subtle in return. Good karma or good reputation or something. So it's very difficult to find unmotivated. At the basic level, I should give something without wanting any money or anything in return. But generally, people want something in return. So then, when Lord Chaitanya gives his verses, these 8 verses, you get to about 4 or 5, and he says, I'm going to serve you, but in payment for that service, I want love for you. So, okay, that's fine. We think that's fine. But it's only the 5th or 6th verse. He goes beyond that. He's assuming the mood of Radharani when he's talking like this. Chaitanya is assuming the mood of Radharani. So he's about 6th verse, and he says, I want to be paid in love. So we think, okay, wow, this is really something high. But he goes beyond. He says, finally comes to the 8th verse, he says, I don't want any payment. You do whatever you want with me. You can crush me, I don't care. I'm going to serve you without any motivation. Nothing I want from you. I just want to serve you. And it's like incredible. You read that, and if you read the progression, I mean, I can't explain it just in these few words, but if you read the progression and you really study it and you try to understand from Chaitanya and also from the description what Krishnadas Kaviraj says about these 8 verses, you can get just a small idea of what what love means. So here, Brahma is saying, Prema Anjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. So Vilochana means by the vision of that's anointed, with the eyes anointed with the mascara of love. Pure love, prema. So that's a very high level. In the beginning, we try to have this Shastra Chakshu. We try to have this vision that's provided by the literature, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and we strive ultimately to have the vision that's provided by bhakti, and with the goal to have the eyes anointed with love. And this goes beyond seeing somebody in the world. I see you, maybe you're somebody I'd like to offer something to, I'd like to help you or sacrifice for you or do something, but this prema, this vision of prema, is the highest thing that exists. Not even in this world. It goes beyond this world. So, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Transcendental vision. Anything?
There's a lot.
Yeah, that was
It's intense, you know. You started off with Shabda Pramana, this evidence, you know,
Yes.
which is like very broad. And I was thinking, I mean, that's the duty of the spiritual master to present that evidence. There's a lot of different comments. I want to just share something I read, since you're speaking on family life too, you know, how the parents tolerate the children.
Mm.
So I read this actually yesterday, which is relevant, and it was Prabhupada's really showing such a personal side to what he's doing, you know. And it's in the 6th canto when Prajapati Daksha curses Narada Muni for stealing both sets of sons that Lord Brahma is giving him, and then Prabhupada points out that, you know, Narada Muni is just basically trying to deliver him and sever his attachments. So it's like, you know, we have this evidence that the Guru has given us where we can raise our children and sever those attachments simultaneously. So this goes back to just what Prabhupada was saying as he's describing in one class this Shabda Pramana. Like he gives the example of like a conch, which a bone is normally something you stay away from. But at the same time, we take this conch and we put it on the altar and we accept it. So likewise, with the raising of our children, they're actually meant to liberate us rather than just entangle us more. So there's an interesting point too that Prabhupada starts to really open up in this purport. It's in 6544 or 6543. So he says, Prajapati Daksha cursed Narada Muni by saying that although he had the facility to travel all over the universe, he would never be able to stay in one place. In the Parampara system for Narada Muni, I have also been cursed. Although I have many sinners that would be suitable for places of residence, I cannot stay anywhere, for I have been cursed by the parents of my young disciples. And then he goes back on, I don't know where, somewhere in there, he's saying he's been cursed because, and he was saying how the parents are very upset that Prabhupada's all, you know, brought them into Krishna consciousness. So he says, I want to give the curse back to my disciples. So that way I can just translate Srimad Bhagavatam in one spot. So it's like going back and forth, you know. So he's saying, yes, I've accepted this curse of traveling, but you know what? I want to sit here and do. So he's, for the benefit of the service as well, giving this Srimad Bhagavatam, not for his own comfort. So it's like these two things, or you have this external. It's just like Mahaprabhu came down here externally, but internally we know the mood was for understanding the rasa between, the separation between Radha and Krishna. So externally it may look like, well, Prabhupada's trying to settle down, but at the same time he's saving the whole world. So there's the devotees always juggling the external kind of situation with the internal intention or motivation. And that's what I got from this. So I really appreciated the different points and aspects.
Any ideas, comments, reaction?
Like Narada has said, with the love with the children, because I do that with them. So the prima having to understand the that you don't want anything in return. And like he has said, you know, and people say, oh, I want to help you out and do this, and I don't want anything in return. That's not true, like he said. So, you know, you want something in return for it, and that's just hard. I mean, I don't know. That's hard.
Well, we don't reject any of that, of course. The idea that people are offering something to us, or Prabhupada said that the woman's love for her child is the highest love we can observe in the world. So it's a good example, but it's not that we consider that's spiritual, the highest in the spiritual world. It's just a good model that we can try to understand. And also the fact that all interactions in this world are worldly interactions. It doesn't mean we reject them. We understand that things in this world are on three levels. One is ignorance, passion, and goodness. And we try to stay away from ignorance. We sometimes, especially in this Western world, it's full of passion. So we sometimes have to accept that there are passionate interactions. And passion doesn't mean really the modern word for passion. It doesn't mean like passion in our world. People are passionate, or they're focused on their objectives. So it doesn't mean that somebody who's focused on the objective of Krishna consciousness is in passion. But so we sometimes have to accept the passions of the world that we encounter, and goodness also. When we see goodness, somebody who's a very good person, who's knowledgeable, who's detached from the world a little bit, that's nice, but that doesn't mean that we accept that that person is on a spiritual level. But still, it's good to be able to hang around with those kind of people and to appreciate those kind of people. So gradually we have to try to understand the world in terms of those three levels, I guess you could say, and see where people's motivations are. So if you get a gift, if somebody's trying to help you, you can always be a little bit skeptical that it's not pure. But if we come across interactions that are spiritual, if people are trying to be spiritual in their relationships, even that may be imperfect. But at least when we try to interact with each other and we try to further our spiritual goals, and we understand that the highest goal is to serve Krishna selflessly, then that's something positive. But it's not as though we're not on the level that we can totally reject everything in the world. We're living here, so we have to sort of deal with it. Yes? You were going to say something?
No. I really enjoyed your talk. It went on a journey. It was really nice. And when you were talking about Shraddha, I was thinking a lot about how our literature is so complete and perfect and pure that we may have other religions that also try to do that. They take their scriptures and they take it as but it's been altered or messed with, so their worldview comes out a little bit off, unfortunately. But we're just very lucky that we have something that's so pure. And when you were talking about what are you doing for Krishna, I really enjoyed that, because you took the example of what we see every day with everyone, our everyday interactions, and love isn't a feeling. When you first come into Krishna consciousness, maybe you get some relief of the material world, and you get excited, you're like, I love Krishna. And then Krishna puts lots of tests in front of you, and you're like, okay, gotta keep going.
Yeah.
And even here, like, when we give things out to the public, we eventually want them not to give to us, but to give to Krishna. That's our goal, is for them to be in that service. And your dear class, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to note that this Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochane, this verse is quoted in 6:330 or 6:30. Sorry. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. So this is kind of course, relevant to your class. So 6:30 in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's explaining in the purport how we have to make that attempt to see Krishna in everything. And of course, us, like, we're not on this level of Mahabhagavat stage, so we have to just try, right? We just have to try. We have to figure out a way to remind ourselves. I mean, we just got this whole college program going, and then now it's like this virus thing, comes in and it's like wiped out. So, we have these moments where we're frustrated, and then you just have to accept. And you say, okay, well, then for some reason or another, this is happening. How do I see Krishna in this? These book distributors. There's a book distributor. They do tons of books. They said nobody's taking books on the streets. Very difficult. They don't want to touch you. They don't want to talk to you. They just want, what do we do? And so it's like, well, you have to figure something out. I was telling my wife, let's get these students and have a picnic. It's going to rain for the next 10 days. Okay, so let's do something, The book distributors as well are thinking, well, how do we do this? Can we just live stream the book and then sell them to people through the mail or something like that? So it's like, you have to figure out different ways. You have to figure out different ways. Even book distribution at one point or another can become even more difficult. That I was thinking about this, how as a society, we've just always like, well, at the end of the day, we have books and prasadam distribution, but even that can be challenged. And then you have to figure out a new way, or you have to figure a new way to give this information, to give the prasadam. So you have to, Krishna's constantly testing us. So we have to see that and at least acknowledge it to get some relief. Otherwise, there's no chance. Prabhupada says there's no chance for the materialists. They're just completely lost.
Yeah, there's some big tests. In the mid 1500s up to about 1600, the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born in 1486, and then so his followers then were sent to Vrindavan, which is Krishna's birthplace, Krishna's appearance, and they were very successful in Vrindavan. They wrote many books, but they also established temples. So from the mid 1500s till about 1600s, early 1600s, they established these temples. They built some very big temples, wonderful temples, and then the Mughal Empire was in charge of most of India, and they allowed them to build the temples, and they got some very successful relationships with the Mughal Empire. Then this one fanatic king took charge, and he decreed that all temples would be destroyed in 1670. So from 1670, it was a big problem for them. So they took the deities of the temples, and this is the most important place for the devotees in our line. They had to take all the deities, and then they went to this place called Kamyavan. It's near to Vrindavan, and they hid in that town, and for several years. And then finally, the kings in Rajasthan, which is a state near, it's maybe, I don't know, 100 miles away or something. So they hid in, first they were hiding in this village, and then in about 1725, this was 50 years after they were first forced out, they were able to establish the deities there. So right now, even today, the Radha Govinda deity is in Jaipur, and it's popular among all the residents of Jaipur. So from 1725 up to today, this Radha Govinda has been worshipped there, and then other Radha Gopinath and other of the main deities of Vrindavan have been there. So just imagine this tremendous upheaval that they went through for first getting this decree. After being so successful, establishing things so well, this huge temple. You haven't seen it, but if you can imagine, it's like the Houston Temple or something. This big red sandstone temple. It's like 6 stories high or something. I don't know. A beautiful temple. So they said, okay, we're going to come and attack this. So they had to move everything. All the devotees left. For 50 years, they were in limbo. And finally, they got a good situation. And then in the local people, it's like common people, like devotees, sort of common people, devotees. They objected and they fought. There was like a popular uprising. And the king was in South India. His armies were in South India, so he couldn't put them down. They rose up for 1 year, and then the armies came and put them down. A lot of disturbance for the devotees. So it happens, from time to time we have to face these adversities and serve Krishna in spite of. So in a way, it may be good that there's some adversity, because then it strengthens our resolve to serve Krishna and to figure out how to establish ourselves and to expand Krishna consciousness. I like to look at things from a historical perspective. So?
Yeah, if I could end, or just compliment, I guess, or share. Prabhupada says, Narada Muni took the opportunity to approach Prajapati Daksha in his bereavement, because the time of bereavement is a suitable time for appreciating Bhakti Yoga, as you're saying. Okay, just end it here. His Grace Dayananda Prabhu Ki Jai.